Well, hey, fabulous authors. Welcome back to episode 10 of RTTV. I am so excited to see you tonight. We have an amazing episode for you today. We are going to be talking a bit about book signings, but not just about book signings. Now, have you ever been at a book signing where things have gone really well, or maybe they haven't gone so well? But you were wondering what to do next. What is that next step to take? And how do you, as an author, get asked back? How do you become that author that everyone wants to come to their signings? Well, tonight we have a very special guest who is going to be talking to us specifically about what you can do to get asked back to your book signings. So let's not waste any time. Let's jump right in and get started so we can hear the amazing stuff that she is bringing us today.
Welcome to RTTV, brought to you by Reading Transforms, with your host, K.M. Robinson of K.M. Robinson Photography and Reading Transforms. If you look to the right of your screen, you will note a chat box. We encourage you to ask questions and comment throughout the show. Our moderators will be watching the feed and collecting questions for our hosts to answer during the end of the broadcast. Use the red question mark tab to differentiate your questions from your comments in the feed. If you are a member of our Facebook community and our weekly newsletter, your notes will be emailed to you shortly. Make sure that you are active this week in our Facebook community for deeper insights into how to apply this into your marketing strategy and for ongoing support. Welcome to the weekly live broadcast that will revolutionize your author branding, book marketing, and social media marketing strategies.
So one of the most important things we can do while we are at a book signing is making sure that we are behaving and acting in a way that is going to get us asked back to the store for another book signing. And here today is one of my dear friends, Sherry Ficklin. She is a fabulous author, and she is really, really great because she is constantly putting out new information for authors who are getting used to the industry or getting to know the industry a little bit better. And she is here today to talk to us about store etiquette. Sherry, how are you?
Great. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So I know that in your time you have done quite a few book signings. Is this something you do frequently, or how does this work for you?
I do. I try and do at least a handful of signings a year, either book signings, deliberate book signings, or I also do a lot of conventions every year, which also include book signings at the conventions. So I have a lot of experience with book signings. And early on, when I first started, there wasn't a lot of information about book signings for authors, and I totally bombed my first handful of events. So I knew that I wanted to do something to help other authors not have those same experiences.
And I know you've put out a lot of content on this specific topic that I have read before, and you've got a lot of really great ideas and really good advice. So we're going to jump in, and we're going to be talking about everything that you've learned throughout your time as being an author, and we are going to be able to implement that into what our watchers are doing in the signing world right now. So the first thing I want to touch on is the very, very beginning, when you are establishing that connection to do the book signing. So tell me a little bit about how this starts out.
Well, a first contact is so important when you're dealing with a bookstore, because what you have is usually a customer service representative or a manager who is inundated by authors all the time looking to do signings, both amateur and professional. So they don't have a lot of time and they have a lot of requests, which is kind of a messy combination for getting seen. So I think the best advice you can have going into a book signing is to, number one, I tell people never walk into a store with your book in hand, because they're actively working. They're at work and you're bothering them. And that's not the first impression that you want to make. You don't want to eat up their time, even if booking authors is part of their job. You can almost always call and get an email address. And I suggest emailing to touch base first. If you want to meet with someone as a follow-up, by all means do that, but always email first. And your email should always be kind and professional, to the point, and it should have all of your book information. They should not have to go searching for it.
Yeah, that's an important tip. I know in past episodes of RTTB, we have been talking about other book world things such as querying, and that getting to the point part of that is so important, because in the book world, people don't have an awful lot of time. And so if you can be clear and concise and to the point and not waste their time, that's going to look much, much better for you. So Now that we've reached out and we've talked to somebody, let's say that they have scheduled you in. What do we need to know next? What kind of things are we bringing with us?
I think your next follow-up should be just as an informative, what do I need to provide and what are you providing with the store? You need to open that communication so that because most places will provide a table and a chair, but not all provide a tablecloth or things like that. So my advice is to always have backups. Like I always take a small folding table, a small chair, and a tablecloth in my trunk with me when I go, just in case. But talk to the store and see what they provide and be prepared to bring things like book stands or whatever you need to bring with you aside from actual books. The other thing you should make sure of is some bookstores will work on consignment for your books and some will actually order your books in, and that depends a lot on the individual book. So for example, if I'm doing a signing at Barnes & Noble right now, they can order my books into the store. I don't have to bring books in with me. But if I'm doing a signing at my local downtown small press shop, then I absolutely have to bring my own books with me to stock, and I'm selling my own books. So just get clarification going in what you need to be bringing.
Yeah, that's a very good point. If you're aware of what you need to bring and then you bring that extra content with you, you're never going to be caught in a bad situation. And I know you and I had been talking before we came on live, and you had made a really good point I wanted to bring up about bringing books with you, and specifically about giving a copy to the store so that they were prepared for you to come. Can you tell me a little bit about what that was all about?
Yeah, one of the things I like to do for the store right after I make my initial contact, once they've said, yes, we'll host you in, I'll say, hey, I would love to provide a couple of reader copies for your employees. And what those are copies that I donate to the store for their break room. It's usually just one or two. That way the employees can go ahead a few weeks before, read the book, and familiarize themselves with it. Because a lot of times it's those employees that are ones doing the announcement, during the signing or whatever. So it just helps if somebody says, hey, what's going on? If they can actively say, oh, we have so-and-so here, this is her book, and this is what it's about. It just makes a big difference for a signing. And it's also just one of those courtesy things. You hate to go into a book signing and your book is titled something, a Feast of All Saints, and they put you in religious fiction for some reason, and they're not entirely sure what your book is about. Meanwhile, it's like a horror. That can and does happen. So it always helps to get the employees familiar with your book before you go in.
That is an incredibly good point. And that actually brings us to our next point, actually going into the store. So talk to me a little bit about what we need to know as far as your arrival time goes.
As a rule, always plan on getting there early and leaving late. I say at least 30 minutes on either end. It always helps to show up, be prepared, be unpacked well before it's time to actually sit down at the table and get started. A lot of times, you'll get shown around the store, you'll be introduced to some of the employees or other people that are in the store. So you want to make sure you're giving yourself time for that. Also, it's always just offer to help set up. What can I help you with? Do you want me to help you bring books out? Do you want me to help set up? It's just the little things. Whatever you can do to make their life easier is going to be a big bonus point for you, and it's going to get you us back.
Absolutely, because so oftentimes people go in and just expect everything to be done for them and not to have to worry about anything, but nobody takes notice of the people who aren't helping. If you make the effort to do something that most people don't do, that's going to make them take notice, and that's going to make them want you back. And I think that's really important, to be very aware of the employees and how you treat them, which actually is something I want to talk to you about. So talk to me a little bit about how we are interacting with these employees within the store.
Your employees of the store are going to be your best friends during any event, because if it's slow, they're going to be the ones that swing by and talk to you and help time pass a little bit quicker. And if it's busy, they're going to be the ones that are sending people to your table and the ones that are, checking people out and helping people find you in the store. So I think those are really important connections to make early on. Introduce yourself to as many of them as you can, get to know them by name, make a good impression. I think that's all this is. When you're an author and you go to a signing event, you are a professional, and it sort of mind boggles you to think of yourself that way, but you're an industry professional representing your brand. So you have to be that ambassador. You have to go out there and make those connections with people.
Absolutely. You as an author are representing your author brand and the book world at large. And you have to remember that as you are going out and doing these different events and being a representative of the brands. So if you take that into consideration as you're doing things, it's really going to dictate how you are approaching things, and it's going to make you look so much better. I think that's really, really important. And I love that you have brought this up and that we've been talking about how to interact with these employees, because it's not something that we normally think about. We just think about showing up and putting out our tables and moving on with life. But that human interaction and that taking care of the people taking care of you thing is what's going to make all of the difference. So now we're in the store, we have everything prepared, we are ready to go. Talk to me about what happens when the doors open, when it's time to go, and people show up, or maybe they don't.
Well, yeah, and that's always the trick, and it's a dice roll. There's so many factors in what kind of crowd you're going to get. I actually had I had done a blog about this, about managing your expectations when you do a store signing. And I had Charlene Harris, who did the Sookie Stackhouse novels and her mystery series, and she was like, I've had signings where I've had 5 people show up, and that's absolutely the case. And it has very little to do with you as an author, and it has a lot to do with a million other factors. So, and it's really hit and miss. You really can't, go into it expecting to have 300 people, because you never know. And I've had it both ways also. I've had huge, ridiculous sold out events where we packed the store, and then I've sat by myself at a table for 2 hours and nobody came to see me. So it just depends. And again, that's where those bookstore employee connections are great, because they really will help you out no matter what the scenario is, as long as they like you. If you've gotten on their good side, they're going to be your advocates in those situations. So I feel like the biggest thing that I can tell you when you're sitting there is try really hard not to look bored or angry. Like, I have to watch myself. I have really bad resting angry face. I'm going to edit that, but it's bad. So I'll just be there in a perfectly good mood and I look just full of rage. So I really have to watch my facial expressions. Nobody wants to come to your table and see you if you just look miserable, So actively make yourself have a good time no matter what the turnout is. If you're having fun, other people will have fun. If you're smiling, people will come to your table. That's kind of the way it is. I would caution people just against, authors tend to go one of two ways with a book signing, especially their first few times. They're either super introverted and quiet, and they kind of spend the whole time looking down and not interacting with the people coming through, or they go like full tilt diva, and they stand up and they call people to their table and they're really pushy about it. And I caution people against being super pushy, just because I had done a multi-author event one time, and the author next to me was very much that super salesman type of author. And she, like, everybody that came to her table took a book and left. And afterwards, the manager told me that she found like 16 copies on the shelf that people had taken and then hidden because they were afraid to tell her that they didn't want it. So it's crazy. So I think, manage your expectations and, find that balance for you of being engaged but not being overly pushy.
I think that's really good, especially because you don't know what you're going to get. So when you walk into one of these events, you don't know if you're going to get no people or one person or 2 people, or if you're going to get 100 people showing up for you. And so you have to be aware of how you are going to handle that situation. And I actually want to bring up one of our earlier points where we were talking about how we are interacting with these employees. If you befriend them before the event, even if nobody shows up to your event, they're probably going to stand around and talk to you. They're going to help you out. They're going to make sure that you are having a good and engaging time, which is going to be really great, even if you don't have anybody show up to kind of see you. So getting involved with those employees and making sure that they're taken care of means they're going to take care of you too. And that's going to give you a better time. And I really want to focus in on how we respond when people are not showing up to your event. So let's say we've walked into a bookstore and we're doing a book signing and no one shows up, or only a couple of people show up. How do we respond to that? I know we've touched on that a little bit about behaving in a way that is engaging and encouraging and not rude or obnoxious, but what do we need to be aware of when we are in a situation that we were not expecting and it is not going as planned?
I think the biggest thing that you can do for yourself is when you do have people come to your table, whether they're store employees or whether they're customers, the best thing you can do is just engage with them. And if it's a slow signing, engage with them for as long as possible. That sounds terrible, but really, I mean, just talk to them, just get to know them, be very personable. You know, you're not in a rush. They may or may not be in a rush. They'll let you know if they are. But if they're curious about you, be like, hey, you know, do you have questions I can answer for you? What kind of books do you read? What kind of things do you enjoy? And just start a conversation. Because I tell people, you know, at the end of the day, it's not really the books that sell books, it's you that sells books. So if people like you, whether or not the book is something that's normally in their wheelhouse, they're much more likely to pick it up. And going back real quick just to making friends with the store staff, one of the things that I really love to do ahead of time is when I come in with all my setup stuff, and I usually have extra things that I bring with me too, which I think you're going to touch on a little bit later. But I also bring like a goodie basket or like a fruit tray or something, like just to put in the, I've brought boxes of donuts before to just give in the break room for the staff, because when I'm there doing a signing, they're doing their job, but they're also there working for me. And so I want to give them a little something that makes it a little more pleasant and enjoyable for them. So that's always good too. And my other piece of advice is if you're doing a book signing, particularly your first few times, bring someone with you. Bring an assistant, bring a friend, photographer, so that it's human nature that when we have people standing at a table, it's the line game. If someone sees someone standing at your table, they want to stand at your table and see what they're selling. So it's having someone there with you definitely helps.
Absolutely. That is so important. And on that note, I kind of want to talk about, and I know this is a little bit off script, but what kind of things should we be aware of to bring to these signings? Is there something specific we need on our table or anything that helps us to engage with our fans?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest draws that you can have at your table is just a really nice display. You know, you have your books and things, but having a little something extra, a little something, a lot of authors use the big standing banners, which I love. I'm a big proponent of the banners, or even just a nice table display, you know, of small things, dishes of candy, what have you, something that just makes it a little bit more inviting, a little bit less scholarly, I'm going to say, you know, something that just looks a little bit more personal. Is definitely a win. And also, you want to have something that you can give. You want that swag that you can give people, because a lot of time bookstores actually function more like showrooms for cars, where people come in, they browse, they see the covers, and then they go buy them online for either ebook or print for the steeper discounts. So if you can hand them a postcard, a business card, a bookmark, something with your name, your book cover on it, and a way to find you online, then you may not make a sale that day, but you will make a sale.
Exactly. That's so important. And actually, we're going to be chatting a little bit about that a little bit later. But I want to talk to you a little bit about the next steps. So we've gone through getting ready for our event, and we've gone through actually doing our event. But now that we're done with our signing, let's talk a little bit about follow-up, because I think that's really important. Your event does not end when the hour strikes 4 o'clock and you're done. So talk to me about how we then follow up.
Absolutely. I think the first thing that you need to do is, usually at the end of an event, the manager or whoever's been coordinating for you will come over and they'll say, hey, you know, thanks for the event, it was great. And you say something along the lines of, you know, if you have copies left over, would you like me to sign some of these and leave you some signed shelf copies? Is there anything I can do? Would you like me to help you clean up? If you're consigning, there might be paperwork that you need to do. See if there's anything else you need to do. Through the signing, I suggest kind of keeping your area just as clean as possible. And at the end of the signing, clean up. Just leave it as neat as you possibly can. A lot of times they'll be busy and they'll say, oh yeah, sign, you know, 5 copies and leave them on the thing for me. Just make sure it still looks pleasant and appealing, because even if you're gone, it could be an hour to 2 hours before they're actually able to go clean up your area. And if it looks like a disaster, that's your book cover in a tornado of crap, and it's not pleasant to the rest of the people that are coming by and seeing it.
That's a very good point. I like that a lot, because you don't typically think of that. I know when I did events, I was very aware of keeping my space clean and ready to go, but I didn't think about it in that way, that your books are going to still be there, that is still going to represent you, because you don't know when they're going to tear that table down and when they're going to take that stuff away. So if you are leaving just a disaster in your wake, that's going to represent you in a very bad light to anyone who comes in afterwards. So I love that you said that. In fact, I think that's a great quotable from this episode, that you really need to be taking care of your space, because once you're gone, you are still being promoted within that space until they take it away, and you don't know when that will be. So great thought. I absolutely love that. So talk to me. Anything else we need to worry about for follow-up?
During an event, I usually bring an assistant with me for the dimensions, the reasons I mentioned before. But also, I have them take pictures during the event. I have them do pictures, and it doesn't have to be like professional photography. iPhone pictures are fine, but get a picture of your booth, get a picture of you sitting at your booth, get a picture of your books. If you have fans that come by and want a picture, get a picture with them. Always try and get at least a few pictures with the store staff to post online, and always try and a few weeks after the event, follow up with a no kidding thank you letter. Like, it's great to send a thank you email, but those personalized thank you letters that they get in the mail are kind of a big deal for stores. A lot of times stores actually have like a bulletin board, and they'll put those on there and they'll last forever. So I always send a thank you letter, and then one of the photos that I took with one of the store employees goes in the thank you letter, because I know that that's going to go on the bulletin board later. And it leaves a really good impression. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten invited back to events year after year because they know I'm easy to work with. They know I'm not going to go, completely diva on them and leave the store trashed when I go. And it makes a big difference.
Absolutely. And I know that you had just mentioned online and how you deal with things online, and that you're putting these photos up online. So let's talk a little bit about how we are handling the promotion of this event after the event takes place within your social media. And I know this is a big deal for you. I know you're very, very good at promoting these events afterwards, and you're very cautious about how you do it. So talk to me about the do's and don'ts of social media after your event.
Right. I think the big things to keep in mind when you're doing an event and you're promoting it on social media, for starters, when you're promoting it beforehand, make sure that you're using the links to the store and the links that they're giving you. Even if you're at a Barnes & Noble, Barnes & Nobles all have their own store page and their own events within those store pages. And that's really what you should be sharing, because it's got the maps, it's got all the details, and it gives them a store contact. A lot of times people will say, well, I can't be there that day, but I want a signed copy. So they'll pre-reserve a signed copy through the store. It just makes it easier for fans to do that. And then after the fact, when you talk about the signing, when you're sharing pictures, and you can also be actively doing it during a signing, but if you're not able to for time, whatever, that's fine too. After the fact, I tell people, you're only as successful as you look online, which sounds like a terrible thing, but it's absolutely the case. If you start posting pictures and things and are like, oh, this event was horrible, I only had one person show up, then what it looks like is that you aren't an author worth coming to see, and it really undermines your author brand. So you have to be very conscious about the way you're portraying things online. Even a miserable signing where nobody shows up, you can have fun at and you can engage at, and it can be a successful signing for you. And that's what you need to focus on. So focus on the positive. And realistically, if you get a half dozen pictures and it's just you and a couple store employees, it still looks online like you had a ton of people come. And it's all perception.
Absolutely. And that's one of the big things I teach when I'm working with my students and my community members, that your online presence is determined by you. And the way that you are promoting yourself within this social media world is how people see you. And I always say, if you don't have proof, it didn't happen. And if you do put out that proof, it's going to look really good for you. So if you photograph things with certain angles, will make it look better. Or if you are photographing yourself with those employees, it still looks like people are there. And you don't have to say, this was an employee, they were the only person that showed up, but this was a really amazing person I got to hang out with at my signing. So the way that you word things, the way that you photograph things, the way that you present things, that all matters. And that determines their perception of you. So even if you don't show up with a lot of people there hanging out with you, you can make it seem like a really good event that you put your heart and soul into and that people appreciate it. So I love that we are very, very aware of how we are dealing with our social media. So any last minute tips that you have for us as far as store etiquette? And then we're going to get to just a couple of things I want to point out and talk with you about.
Yeah, I think that the few things to keep in mind are that even if you only have, one or two people show up at a signing, that signing may have been the highlight of their day. Like, they may have been so looking forward to meeting you. And I feel like as a professional author, you have an obligation to make that a pleasant experience for them. So I always tell authors, no matter how crappy your day is going, no matter how bad you feel, no matter how sick you are, no matter, whatever your personal circumstances are, when you walk into that store, you are on. You are pleasant, you are engaging, you're having a great time, and you're going to make it worth the while of whoever comes. That is your job at a book signing. And I think a lot of authors forget that. We feel very sort of me-centered, like, oh, this is my big time to shine. It's not about you. Book signings really aren't about you. They're about the fans. And I think as long as you keep that in mind, you're going to do just fine.
I think that's brilliant advice and another quotable from this episode. So guys, really, really be aware that these events, while it revolves around you, while it's centered around you, it is not about you. It's about what you're doing for your fans. It's about giving them good customer service. It's about representing your brand to them and making sure that they enjoy being with you and engaging within your brand. So that is super, super important. Now, Sherry, there's a couple things I want to run past you. I actually have a couple tips of my own for events like these. I have been known to do some rather fun events over the last couple of years, and I picked up a couple things that really have helped me within my industries, and I feel like it's going to be very beneficial to the book industry as well. So the first thing I want to run past you is QR codes. Now, I always tell my students and my fans, when you are going to a signing, bring your QR codes with you. So print those out, have those that you can put up on the wall or put on the table that link directly to either your website or to your Amazon or Goodreads pages, so that when people are standing in line waiting for you, they can just click and scan and look up your information before they ever get to you. Do you feel like that's going to be something that's going to be helpful?
Absolutely. And I see a lot of authors do a really good job with we talked about the big banners and stuff that they have, the vinyl banners that they use. A lot of authors will put their QR code right on the banner so that even if they're not at the table, if the banner's up, you can scan it and you can get whatever books that you'd like to. That's particularly helpful if you're in an event where you have to leave and do panels and things, and so you have to leave the booth unattended every once in a while. Those are great. Also, if you're ordering postcards, on normally when you order postcards through somewhere like Vistaprint, you do a black and white back. Guess what? QR codes are black and white. You can throw it on the back, no extra cost, and it's a scanning thing right there. Super easy to do. QR codes are my favorite, and I do recommend either linking to your website, to your direct buy links through your website, or to your Amazon pages are probably your easiest. You don't want people to have to navigate too much to find your books.
Exactly. And I've always said QR codes are good because you're going to have people in your line who want to see you, but don't necessarily want the physical copies of your book. They may be an ebook person. So what happens if they show up and they don't buy your physical book, but they want to buy your digital book? That's the way to get it directly to them, and they can do it right in line. And that actually brings me to a different point, and that is to bring postcards like we were just talking about, postcards or bookmarks or book plates so that you can sign things for them, because not everybody is going to have a physical copy of your book. They may be an ebook person or they may be buying later and they want you to sign something. So that is a fantastic point, to bring those extra things in and then to get the QR code on there so that they can always link back to you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this next point. This is one of my favorites, and I know you already talked about this, but I think it's so important we're going to talk about it again because I really like this one, and it's to bring a friend with you. And we talked about how it's good to have a friend because you can talk to somebody, you have somebody there that encourages other people to come see you, but they can also run errands for you. So if you need water, or if you aren't feeling well and you need food, they can go grab something for you and bring it back. Or if you run out of books and they need to go get them, they can grab them for you and bring them back. But then my biggest point is to have them there to record for you and to photograph for you. So I'm a big fan of doing Facebook Live and Periscope Live, so if you are aware in advance that you're going to be doing this, let your fans know, and then they can film for you. They can take photos for you. They can be the ones to document your day for you so that you can focus solely on your fans. And I know that you oftentimes bring a friend with you to handle all of these things. So have you found that that's super beneficial to you, or is it kind of one of those you could or you couldn't kind of a things, whether you want to or not? I'm personally one of those, you should have them.
Yeah, I've done signings on my own, and it's so much more difficult. It's so much harder when you're doing it all on your own, because you do have the store staff as support, but they're at some point that's not their job. Like it's not their job to get you coffee when you're dehydrated from talking to somebody and your throat is sore. So I think having a friend or an assistant really makes a big difference. And most stores they don't have an issue with you bringing someone. They're kind of used to authors bringing an assistant or someone to come in and do that. So it's not an issue. Don't think that it is. And a lot of times they'll even provide an extra chair so they can sit down with you at your table or something if you need them to. don't be afraid to ask to bring someone with you. It's really not a problem. And they're, like you said, recording, doing pictures, all of those things. There's nothing worse than having a signing line 6 miles long and having to stop and take 5 minutes to try and selfie with somebody because my arms are really short, and then trying to like get a decent picture. Having someone there that can just do the quick snap, you're done, it makes a big difference. It just makes things so much easier. Yeah, absolutely take someone with you.
It really does help with the flow, doesn't it? I've definitely taken assistants with me when I do my events, and it just helps relieve so much stress during the day. So highly recommend bring a friend with you, bring your kid with you, bring somebody responsible with you that can handle all of your promotional work and take care of you while you are taking care of your fans. Now, another thing I want to bring up is how you dress, because people dress in one way in person and it looks nice, but you have to remember you are going to be photographed, you are going to be video recorded, and different outfits look different within these different formats. So I would caution you to wear things that are not necessarily boldly printed or neon colors. You're going to want to avoid things like logos to avoid copyright infringement. You want to wear things that are form-fitting and not baggy. And you want to check yourself in the mirror from all angles to make sure you look good. And another thing I want to point out is when you are preparing what you are wearing and how you are styling yourself for the day, be aware of your hands. So as you are signing things, people are going to be very aware of your hands as you are writing and as you are doing things. So if you want to paint your nails nicely, make sure that it's not chipped nail polish or it's not all broken up. If you want to wear jewelry or whatever, make sure you're aware that people are going to be focusing on your hands, and make sure they look presentable. So even if you're a guy and you don't paint your nails, make sure your nails are clean and everything looks good, because they're going to be focused on your hands. I want to talk a little bit about how you were writing. So one of my big things is to tell people to test your writing utensils in advance. So don't just walk into a signing with a marker and assume it's going to work. It might not work. So Sherry, talk to me a little bit about this. I know that some stores provide writing utensils for you and sometimes you bring them yourself, but is it wise to have backup? Is it wise to test things out? Should you have a signature prepared in advance? What should we do along the lines of that?
Absolutely. I think a couple days before you're signing, and this sounds so, just vain, but sit down with a pad of paper and just practice how you want to write your signature. If you want to write a little tagline with your signature, and just, see how it's going to flow, see what markers you want to use, like make sure they don't transfer bleed through paper. Try things out and just see where you're at. And I always take at least 5 with me, because the funny thing happens, I use the Sharpie markers, the non-bleed Sharpie markers. They will usually give you pens at an event, but I don't like using ink as much. I like the bolder Sharpies, so I use those. But once you've signed about 10 copies with a Sharpie, it just being exposed to the air dries it out enough that where it starts dying on you. So you put the lid on it, you put it down, you grab another one, and it's no problem. You just keep going. And it's not that the markers run out of ink or that you can't use the marker again. You can swap them out. It just needs a break. Like it needs to reabsorb, into the felt tip. So yeah, try your writing utensils beforehand. Know what you want to say. There's nothing worse than getting there and opening the book and being like, oh, I don't know what to say. The other thing you can do is you can bring Post-it notes with you. And if you have a long line of people, your assistant can go through and say, hey, do you want your book personalized? And if so, can you write your name on this Post-it so they can spell it? Then that way they're not trying to spell it to me while I'm trying to write it. I can just take the Post-it and look at it and see it as I'm signing. That's a big help too. Another one of those things that it's nice to have an assistant there to help you with.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice. So bring multiple utensils so that you don't have them run out or dry up temporarily. You can rotate through those, and then have your assistant take those Post-it notes through and get the spellings, because heaven knows there are going to be names that you can't spell, and when they spell it, they're going to spell it really fast and you won't be able to hear it, and it's just going to be a disaster. So if they have it written down for you, it's going to make life so much easier. And my last point is going to be in terms of that communication as well. So if you go to a store, I'm going to caution you to have something prepared to say. Now, chances are they aren't going to ask you to stand up and say anything, but what happens if you walk into a store and all of a sudden the manager presents you and says they're going to say a few words and you have nothing prepared? Talk to me, Sherry, about how important that is. Has that ever happened to you? Is this something we need to be worried about?
Oh, it has happened to me. So fun fact, I used to have a really paralyzing fear of public speaking, to the point where I would just break down in tears and I would shake, and it was ugly. So when I was like 13, 14, my mother, in her Southern brilliance, decided the best way to get me over that was to start putting me in beauty pageants, where I had to get up on stage and give speeches and answer questions, and it did work. So I've got a little bit of experience, thinking on my feet and being able to prepare something that sounds really decent in a fairly quick amount of time. Thank you, Mom, for that, even though it traumatized me as a 13-year-old girl. I think your best thing that you can do is have your go-to talking points prepared. We talked about pitches in previous episodes, things like that. Thank people for coming. Ask people if they have any questions. People love to ask authors questions, and that's a great segue while you're trying to think of something interesting to say. Does anybody have any questions for me? Is there anything I can tell you about the book, about the period, about what I'm writing? And people love that. So just always have something in your back pocket going in. And a lot of times the other thing they'll ask you to do is, particularly if a signing is a little bit slow, they'll say, hey, why don't you go do a reading? and suddenly you're expected to take your book and go read, like the first 10 pages or whatever, in front of people, which can be nerve-wracking. So practice ahead of time just in case.
Great advice. My goodness, it sounds like so much fun. So we are now at the point where we're going to actually open it up to questions. So that was a really good segue. When you aren't sure what to say, let them ask questions. Or if you come to the end of your notes, ask for questions. So guys, go ahead, jump into the right side. That would be this side for you guys. The right side of your screen, to use the red question mark in the little tab there so that we know what is a question and what is a comment. Our moderators have been watching throughout the show. We are ready to go with some of your questions. But go ahead, if you have any other questions, pop those in as we are talking, and we will take as many as we can. Let's find out what you are worried about. What are you worried about as far as book signings go, or things that you have to bring, or are you worried about what to say? Ask us your questions, tell us what you're worried about, and we will get those answered for you right now. Okay, so we've got some questions we are going to ask right now. I'm seeing one that just popped up before we get to the ones the moderator sent us. Lissa would like to know, is there an etiquette to approaching bookstores to suggest an event rather than if they invite you? So other than maybe a signing, what etiquette is there as far as approaching them for some kind of event?
Well, it really depends. I think a lot of times authors think that the only way they can do an event is if it is a signing. But periodically through the years, bookstores offer other types of things. A lot of times they offer a community or just themed events, Halloween themed, or sometimes like my local bookstore does fundraisers over the holidays for various schools. And those are sometimes events that they invite authors to come to. It's very rare for a bookstore to cold invite an author to do a signing. It's almost always up to either the publisher or the author themselves to call and ask and inquire, particularly if you're a local author or if you're going to be traveling to the area and you're interested in doing a signing while you're in that area. Whenever I go home to the East Coast, I don't get out very often. So while I go, I always try and set up a signing just for my fans on that coast that I don't get to see very often. And the etiquette's always the same. It's always professional first contact, an email, the dates you're available if there are specific dates, or just a general, I would love to do an event at your store. Do you have anything coming up that I could be a part of, or would it be possible to set up an individual signing?
Fantastic. All right, so are there differences between signings at bookstores and signings at conventions? And I think this is a very good question because we oftentimes think about signings as just those bookstore signings, but there's also things like conventions. So talk to me, are there differences between these two types of events?
Absolutely, absolutely. And not just bookstores versus convention. There's a million ways that you can do a book event. I know we have a local farmers market here that features authors every Thursday during the summer at a special author booth at the farmers market and things like that. So there are lots of opportunities to get out and do signings and interact with your fans. And book signings are really just one of them if you're talking about in-store. There's a big difference between an independent store and a chain store. The rules are usually vastly different. at a chain store, something like Barnes and Noble, a lot of times they will sell the books for you. You'll go in and they'll have ordered copies and they'll take away anything that's left over after. If you're doing something at a smaller store or even at an event like a convention or a fair of some kind, usually you're consigning at that point. So you're either then bringing your own books in the store, selling them for you, or you're self-selling. Most conventions are self-selling conventions. So if I go to a book convention, I like to do Houston Author Bash, which is a great one. I go, they give me a table, and I sign and sell books for 2 hours on a Saturday. But that means that I'm responsible for collecting taxes, for selling the books, for reporting my earnings. And at those events, you want to make sure that you have everything in line to self-sell, including, I always tell people, take like a card reader, like a Square, or I use like an Intuit device that just plugs right into my cell phone so I can accept credit cards at the event. Most people don't use cash anymore. So, and you just have to be aware of what sort of event you're doing when you go into it.
Fantastic. That actually brings me to a question that I'm going to ask before we get back to these questions. How many books should we be bringing to these events if you are selling for yourself?
That's a really good question. And I think once you have experience doing an event, like I do Denver Comic-Con every year, so I've got a pretty good fan base that knows that I'm going to be there every year. So I sell a lot more at that event than I might at, so for example, I'm doing Emerald City, which is in Seattle, next year for the first time. So I'll take a lot less books to that than I will to Denver just because I have a reputation at Denver. That said, about 1% of however many people you expect to be attending is a good number to shoot for. But never less than 5 copies of your books, of your newest releases. If it's a really small local event, 2 or 3 each of your backlog is okay. But you always want at least 5 of your newest releases. And for the bigger events, that number goes up. Again, 1% is a pretty good estimate.
Fantastic. Typically speaking, how much space do you have to work with for your table? So do you have a ton of space? Is it a big table, a little table? What are we looking at?
That depends a lot on the event. If I'm doing an event at a convention or a bookstore, the tables run between 4 foot and 6 foot, but a lot of times I can end up sharing a table with 2 or 3 other people, or 1 or 2 other people to make 3 total. I think the most I've ever had is I've had 3 people on a 6-foot table, which gives you very little space. You've got like 12 to 14 inches of space. So you have to, just know going in how much space you're going to have. If you're doing something with a Barnes & Noble that's like a multi-author event, they'll usually do 2 to a table for something like that. Just ask ahead of time what size the table is going to be and know going in. And I can't stress enough that you go up with your table displays instead of just kind of spreading. Height really does give you a very appealing draw to the eye. So if you can, put those books on stands and stack a little bit and kind of vary your height level, it makes a very nice display.
Fantastic. And that's a really good point, because when people are farther away, if they are looking at your table and they just see a table, they aren't going to know what's going on. But if they see your stand built up or they see your books up, they're going to have a better idea of who you are and what you're doing. So that's fantastic advice. In regards to reaching out and following up with bookstores afterwards, is there a time frame for following up with the bookstores? Is there that sweet spot where you should be reaching out to them and thanking them?
It's kind of like a first date. So you don't want to seem super eager and do it like the day of, but you definitely don't want to wait, more than about 2 weeks. It's use your own judgment, but realistically, I say in that first 2-week period to even that first week after is probably your sweet spot for following up.
Fantastic. Oh, I like this one. Okay, so we want to know, do you have any suggestions for making your signings special for fans? I know that we had mentioned that sometimes these fans come in and they are there just to see you, and they make a special trip just to see you, and sometimes it's from really far away. And you brought up that it's not about you as the author, it's about your fans. So what do you have suggestion-wise for things that we can do to make it special for our fans, or make it a unique experience for our fans while we're at signings?
And that's a great point. I think a lot of things you can do are, a lot of authors will do fan exclusive swag. So if someone comes up to me and I'm at an event and they're like, hey, I follow you on social media, or hey, you know, I've read all these books and I just love them, I have special swag that I actually keep under the table that I only give to certain people. And that's like my special people swag. And that sounds terrible to say, but it's usually a little more pricey. It's usually a little more high end than just the paper stuff that I give away. But it's a little something special for the fans to come to my table that are already familiar with me. Another thing I've been known to do at conventions, I have more than once taken a group of fans like to breakfast at a convention or something. And what I'll do is just, if I'm doing an event out of town online, I'll say, hey, who wants to have breakfast with me before I go do my signing this day? And they'll sign up online, and then we'll go have a great breakfast before my event. And it's just a nice thing that I can do, you know, and interact with my readers and have a good time making friends.
That's really fantastic, because that is such a good way to nurture your fan base and to really grow that relationship with them. So when you do things like give them special swag that's a little more pricey and a little more exclusive and a little more meaningful, that really means something to your fans. And then they're going to go and say something nice about you on social media. They'll tell their friends about you, and they will really treasure that thing. So that's fantastic. And I absolutely love the idea of spending time with them outside of the book signing. So if you can spend time with them, if you can take them and do something, if you can give them an experience with you, that just means the world to them. Think about how people would feel if their favorite actor took them somewhere, or if their favorite teacher did something awesome for them. It's the same thing with authors. If you can come up with something that's unique and is an experience for them, that's going to mean so much more. And then you have dedicated fans for life. So that's fantastic. I love that idea. All right, we've got one more question we're going to hit on today before we sign off, and I feel like you're going to like this one. This is kind of a fun one. We want to be talking about those markers that we're signing books with. So is there a specific marker color that is better than another one? Should we go with black? Should we go with gold? Are the metallics good? What have you found that really works on the pages of your book?
I'm such a freak that I will actually have different colored markers for different books that I sign. So like if I'm signing the Extracted series, which is my steampunk, I have gold markers and silver markers that I'll use for that. I don't sign on the cover because I don't like ruining my pretty glossy. I sign on the page, but I still use the color coordinating markers. So if I'm signing like Logan, it's like hot pink, or if I'm signing the Queen books, it's red. And it's just my own neuroses. I just like doing it. It just makes me happy. But really, anything that you're happy with, your fans will be happy with. I don't think it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So if you've got books, surprise, surprise, we've got books here, and you can match your markers to the covers, how cool would that be to have? Take a look at that. We've got red on the cover. That would be so awesome on the inside. If you actually go through the rest of Sherry's books in that series, we've got the reds that would look really cool with that. If you picked up maybe a green marker, that would look really awesome with this one. So color coordinating just adds that finishing touch. It's kind of that higher end experience. So I love that we are color coordinating. Have you, and this is just my personal question, have you found that black works for you as far as not bleeding through and all that, or is it kind of something you would shy away from?
No, Sharpie makes a good black. They make a good special, it's a special non-bleed black that Sharpie does that I just love, and I'll use that all the time. It's one of my favorites. So I will say, if you're also signing, we also do like the glossy bookmarks to give away, which we sign sometimes. And you want to use a lighter silver. If your bookmark is dark, use like a silver or a white for that, and just so you can see it better. I had black ones, and I tried to use like red, and it was terrible. So practice beforehand what colors you're going to use on which swag that you're signing to, so you know what to expect.
That's a very good point, because if we are signing on the inside of books, we know that it's just, oh, look at that. Look at that. If we are signing the inside of books, that's white paper. So you can pretty much use any color with the inside of a book. But if you are signing a postcard, so you're signing on top of something like this, your dark colors might show up on the light colors, but it wouldn't show up on the darker colors within that book cover. So let's say we're signing this one. That silver might not show up as much as a red or a black or a darker color. So you have to be very aware of what it is that you're signing. And like Sherry mentioned, if it's different textures, so if you have that glossy print or if you have more of a matte finish print, you're going to want to try those markers out first so that it doesn't smear and smudge, and you know what looks good and what kind of cooperates with you and what isn't. So if you do that in advance beforehand, you don't look silly trying to deal with it at the table in front of everybody. So, Sherry, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. This has been so informative. We've learned all about how we can go about using our proper store etiquette to get ourselves invited again and again to bookstores. We've talked about how we should be treating the employees, how we should be treating the fans, how we can give them an experience and an interactive experience with you as an author, and really make your signings about your fans so that you are growing that relationship with them. I truly appreciate your knowledge. We are definitely having you back for more. You are a wealth of information, and this has been so great. Thank you, Sherry, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
All right, guys, if you have absolutely loved this, you can jump on to www.readingtransforms.com for access to our communities, to all of the projects we're working on, to our online courses, and to our live stream videos where we are teaching you about marketing, branding, and your social media strategy. You can also jump on to community.readingtransforms.com for access to our closed Facebook group. So every week we are in there, we are talking about the lessons that we are learning every week, we are growing and supporting each other, and it is a fantastic place to be. And you are surrounded by authors who are in the exact same place as you are. So I hope that you join us, community.readingtransforms.com. We will be in there all week, every week, all the time. We are hanging out. It is so much fun. And because you know I would never leave you on your own to figure this out, we have our bonus downloadable freebie for you this week, which is a checklist of all of the things you should be aware of to take to your book signing with you. So next time you are going to a book signing, next time you're going to an event, you have this checklist. You can just check things off one at a time. Make sure you have everything, right down to the markers that you're bringing and the swag that you're bringing for your fans and the other things that you need to remember to make your event successful. So that is going out tomorrow in our newsletter. If you are not a member of our weekly show notes newsletter, you can jump on to shownotes.readingtransforms.com, and all of that information will be sent out to you tomorrow morning. And don't worry, if you are watching our free broadcast, that will be there in the show notes. You can have the link and you can jump on and grab all of our back bonuses so that you have everything that you have missed up until this point, so that you can make the most out of your author brand and do the best that you can for your business. Now, there are a few things I want you to remember before we go, but thank you so much for joining us tonight. It has been a pleasure. Check these out and stay inspired.
Hey authors, I know that marketing your book can be so confusing, especially when you don't have a big budget to work with, but I want you to know that there are ways that you can market your book without costing you a cent. I have come up with a list of 20 totally cost-free marketing ideas that you can implement into your marketing strategy and see the same great results that my own authors have seen when they implemented it into their marketing plan. You can get your very own totally free copy of how to market your book creatively and effectively, even when you're flat broke, if you jump on to www.readingtransforms.com. Up near the top, you're going to see a spot where you can download it completely for free. It is my gift to you. I hope that you take this PDF and you use it in your marketing strategy and see incredible results, and I can't wait to see what you do with it. I'm KM Robinson of KM Robinson Photography and Reading Transforms. Stay inspired. Do you have a new book releasing soon? Do you want to create a unique experience for your fans on your book release day? Do you want to interact with your fans, celebrate your book, and be the talk of the industry? Book launch live events bring all this and more right into your grasp. Rita Award winner and New York Times bestselling author Pin Tip Dunn called it the highlight of my release day. Dying to find out if this is for you? Visit booklaunchlive.readingtransforms.com for more info and see if this is the perfect thing for your release day. Do you ever feel like you're alone in the book world? When the conferences die down and you're sitting in front of your computer alone writing your next manuscript, things can seem very isolated. But they don't have to be. Do you ever feel like social media changes are getting the better of you? Do you feel like you need support that you just don't have? You don't have to be on your own trying to solve the algorithms. Join the Reading Transforms community for a group of authors and book world professionals going through the same things as you. Connect and support one another. Hear from industry leaders on technology changes, and get the latest updates on RTTV, the weekly live broadcast that teaches you to market your books and brand yourself more efficiently and creatively. Get the community and support that you've been longing for, and surround yourself with authors just like you. We'll see you there.